Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Play, Pause, Rewind. We're back for our 90th episode of the show. Good to be back. You know, busy couple weeks as always. Niles, how have you been since our last episode?
I've been good. I've been chilling. It's been a good little transition period. We talked about the Beast last episode, and on that episode I mentioned I got a new job, but I don't think that episode probably didn't get a ton of listeners, but it got some. But since I got that new job, I've had a little bit of time off to just kind of resettle and watch a lot of good TV at the same time and just get set for the new job. And now I feel like I'm drinking from a fire hose, which is always fun at a new job.
And it will be like that forever.
Yeah, probably at this rate, probably. But yeah, it's been a good 2 weeks. How about you, Dylan? How have you been?
Yeah, pretty good as well. Busy as always. We had our beloved reporting week last week for work, so that was delightful. We also had a holiday, the 4th of July, as we are Americans. Felt extremely unpatriotic this year, as I do most years now, but I will always take an excuse to drink and eat with my friends, and that's what I did. And I felt horrible the next day. Just truly dreadful. Friday was a very rough time.
Yeah, this year was unfortunate. 4th of July, Thursday. Mm-hmm. What the hell? Still got that Friday and that Wednesday, and ugh.
Yeah, I did not have Friday off, but oh well.
I did.
Yeah. Well, you were briefly unemployed, so that's
exactly.
But as always, we are here to talk about a film or TV show. In this case, a movie, and we are talking about Kinds of Kindness. We'll do a few moments of non-spoilers, and then we'll dive into spoilers after that. But this is the latest film directed by Yorgos Lanthimos and written by Yorgos Lanthimos and Efthimis Philippou. Niles, would you like to give us a rundown of what Kinds of Kindness is all about?
Oh, I thought you'd never ask. Of course. We're reviewing two back-to-back anthology movies with three unconnected vignettes or semi-connected vignettes.
Semi-connected. Last time was more connected than this. This is more anthology, and that was a different type of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. The Beast was a whole other beast of its own. And Kinds of Kindness is, like I said, an anthology film. We're exploring three unconnected, loosely connected vignettes set in the modern era. So the first one, without going into too much spoilers just yet, but the first one's about a man who attempts to take control of his predetermined life path. The second one's about a small-town cop questioning the demeanor of his wife after being lost at sea. And the third one is about a woman who searches for an extraordinary, prophesized individual to lead a cult. It stars Emma, or she going by Emily now, right?
What?
I thought I read that online. Anyways, Emma Stone. Jesse Plemons, Willem Dafoe, Mamadou Athie, Hong Chow, Margaret Qualley, and many, many others. Dylan, what are your initial thoughts on Kinds of Kindness?
I really liked this. I thought it was fascinating. It's pretty fucked up, and I would say if you are someone who gets triggered by media you watch, you should look up trigger warnings for this, absolutely. But it is a very entertaining movie, and it has a lot of surprisingly funny moments in it as well. I will say I have, at this point, only seen Poor Things from Yorgos Lanthimos, so I wasn't really sure what to expect from this, and this is not at all what I became loosely accustomed to with Poor Things. Poor Things is a very positive, life-affirming movie that is, heartwarming in its own way. This is not. But I liked how it was an anthology film, as we've mentioned already, and it was three separate stories connected primarily by theme and the same actors appearing in each one as different characters. I really enjoyed it. I liked all three stories, and I thought the sense of humor was very dark but witty at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, each story worked on its own as its weird little short film, but together I think they coalesce into a greater whole. So, what about you? What are your initial thoughts?
I agree with a lot of what you just said because I think that this I'm very positive on Kinds of Kindness, which is surprising because if you're a listener, you may recall that I disliked The Lobster. I didn't finish it, so it just was too dark of a comedy for me, which was surprising for me. But I really liked The Favorite, and I still got to see a lot of the other movies on Yorgos's roster.
Okay.
So definitely still more to watch, but I really like The Favorite, and I'm very positive on Kinds of Kindness here. I was genuinely surprised at how funny this movie was. I wasn't expecting it to be this funny. I was chuckling out loud. Went to the Mayan to go see this, and I just could hear my laughter just reverberating back because it's such a small theater.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it's punctuated with these very hilarious and absurd moments, but then it kind of oscillates in a way to this like terrifying and stressful moments at the same time. So it's like on the one hand you get these really great comedic moments, and then the next moment you're like, oh my god, I needed a trigger warning for that. You know, and this movie title, it's simultaneously accurate and inaccurate in a way, and I'll explain that because I think that these stories, they showcase various kinds of kindness. You can definitely read into that angle here in this movie. You know, the types of kindness you see on screen, they range from these broad pleasantries about just like, oh, do you have kids? That's really nice. You have a beautiful kid kind of deal, to these actual selfless acts of kindness. And then on the complete opposite end, you have these very manipulative acts of kindness and just straight up moments of cruelty, I would say. But that said, I don't think that this movie is really about kindness at the end of the day. I think it is pretty central, but I think what it's really more about is control and manipulation, and we'll dive a lot deeper into that in our spoiler discussion.
Yeah, I think like it's about kindness in the sense that kindness is used as a method of control, and it's sort of weaponized in a lot of ways. Before we move on into spoilers, so I do want to call out the score. I thought was very interesting. It's understated a lot of the time, except for a really harsh piano that punctuates a lot of moments, and it's very musically interesting, and it really makes you sit with just what you're looking at a lot, because there's like silence, and then it's like
yeah, or it's just like, God, they did like some really cool transitions in this movie too. Like there's like that one moment where that woman's like, I'm going to go practice piano. I haven't played piano since I was a little girl. Then all of a sudden these really discordant chords from the piano start to chime out. It's like, oh my gosh, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so true. The soundtrack is very interesting here. And yeah, great performances all around. Everyone does fantastic job. I think all the actors did so well.
Yep.
One thing I do want to say though, and maybe I've said this before on this podcast, but I think my viewing experience was improved because, I mean, I don't really have much of a frame of reference right now with that because I've only seen it once. But I went into this movie blind. You know, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't watch any trailers. So I just kind of went in and just expected something odd. That was it. I was just expecting a good movie from a good director. And I think this is more of just a general critique of the entertainment industry. Just myself, I feel like I'm just growing to just not enjoy trailers anymore.
Okay.
I just think that they take away a lot of the surprises from the movie. And the last few movies that I've seen in theaters, like Furiosa, and there's another one that's blanking on my mind right now. But I didn't watch any trailers. I just went in blind, and I feel like it just improves my viewing experience just for me. That's just me personally. But I think if you can go into this movie blind without knowing a lot, this is a good one. This is a good one to be surprised by.
Yeah, I agree. And with trailers, like the trailer for this movie doesn't spoil anything really. It's like I think I think it's a great example of a good trailer because if you watch it, it is just kind of vibes. It's like just shots of the characters with the sweet dreams are made of these.
Right.
Like, which, if your movie starts with that song, I'm already more on board than I was otherwise.
Yeah.
I love that song. But I want to spin off from your point, too, and make a critique of fan culture and fan discussions of media. We talked about this yesterday on the way to the theater, but just when we'll talk about it more in our House of the Dragon episode eventually. But like, I now know how so many characters in House of the Dragon die. I didn't want to know that, but I've chosen to try to watch the show first, and I'll read the book afterward because the book is not a novel, from my understanding. It's a history of the era. I want the narrative, and spoiler culture is so weirdly discourteous, I think, because people who have read the source material will just openly talk about major plot points that haven't happened in the more broadly viewed adaptation, and I think that's just kind of disrespectful. And
it's shitty.
It's shitty. It's like, and I understand a good show or a good movie will not be ruined if you have things spoiled, right? If it's good enough, it'll still be good. But I think everyone can recognize, like, emotional moments or big plot reveals are best experienced within the emotional context of the actual story. I would rather learn about a major character's death as they die in the show, in a scene that is built to make me feel emotions rather than some fucker's tweet. Like, I don't know. Just be courteous.
Yeah, those people are just like joy robbers,
Yeah.
They're like, I get pleasure out of taking away this
I don't even think it's
for
that,
other
though.
people.
I don't think they think about it at all. I think they just don't think about other people. I think that's all it is. It's
Porque
just
no los dos.
Yeah, porque no los dos, indeed. But enough about that. Do you want to do some spoiler talk for a while?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about Kinds of Kindness, dive into our full discussion on this movie.
Yeah.
So this first, we're gonna approach this first kind of episodically, and we'll talk about it more broadly. We're gonna talk about each vignette individually.
Kind of how we did with the Beast.
Yes, exactly how we did it with the Beast. So we're tackling this Beast very similarly. So the first one, vignette, is the death of RMF. In this one, Jesse Plemons' character, Robert, has let Willem Dafoe's character, Raymond, make basically every decision in his life for over a decade. He kind of runs the show. He's like charting out his meals, and he's like, you got to put on more weight. You got to do this. Then
he gets a little letter from him every day that gives him like instructions on what activities, like down to what book he's supposed to read, whether or not he can have sex, what time to drink, what type of liquor, everything.
Yeah. What kind of meal you're going to eat that day. It's ridiculous. And then, we see just how many decisions he's made. It was like, oh, you're going to talk to this woman and she's going to become your wife. You're going to get this house and you're going to do this and that. And eventually we meet Robert when he decides he can't really commit to this murder for Raymond, really.
Yeah.
And then he becomes kind of shunned and cast out of favor.
Yes.
And it's kind of his own self-discovery of trying to become his own decision maker for his life again, and he really can't do it. He really can't. But out of desperation, he finally atones for his mistakes and kills RMF.
That's such a funny way to talk about this character's arc. Like, he tries to discover himself, but then eventually he makes up for it by returning back to this man who controls it.
Yeah. It's like, you're so close to having an identity, and he just can't figure it out without someone telling him this is your
atonement for autonomy. Atonement for attempted autonomy. That's what this storyline is.
That's a band name right there.
Yeah.
Really bad band name.
They're a cover band. They only play other people's songs.
I like that. But this was a very interesting vignette, and I really liked that they kicked off the movie this way. I didn't know what to expect yet or next. I was kind of expecting this whole death of RMF to be just drawn out for the entire movie, and I thought this was just going to be the whole movie. Nope. not the case. It was over so quick, but it felt like a very full and complete story in its way. And it feels like that the themes of kindness and control and manipulation, they really come to fruition pretty immediately here. Because Raymond, he's giving a lot of this feigned kindness to Robert. Like, he's doing all these nice things for him, but he's literally providing these instructions, like we're talking about, every little detail for Robert's day, every little thing. He's telling him what to do. And when Robert doesn't follow through on a single commitment, their entire relationship dynamic changes. And it's like, yes, he's helping open doors for Robert and opportunities, and he's sending him gifts and all this great stuff. He helped him get this house and this wife, and it's great. But it's all conditional on Robert's obedience to Raymond and this toxic relationship, this toxic control and manipulation. It feels so transactional and more about control than actually being kind to someone you like,
Yeah. It's very toxic and abusive, because I think this is true of a lot of relationships, like not this specific dynamic, but with an abusive power dynamic like this, where it's like one person has to make all of these sacrifices for the other person, and the one time they're like, I know this is too much, then it's like, oh, like what Raymond says is like, you clearly do not love me. This is not love.
Yeah,
and it's really actually dark in a lot. Like, as goofy as this storyline is, this is I think an exaggerated depiction of a very real dynamic that a lot of people go through. It's just like one hesitation, one pushback ends this dynamic that Robert, for some reason, incredibly values. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting, but
yeah, it's fucked up is what it is, and the fucked uppery gets turned up to another level when Emma Roberts' character Stone, thank you, Stone, when Liz, she enters the story and seems to kind of fall into favor. Rita. I get mixed up with all these names. Rita. Couldn't keep it straight, but Rita, she enters the story and she kind of falls into favor with Raymond, and we start to see the same things happening, where she's the one who comes into the hospital because she crashed into that car. She drives the same car as Raymond. She gets these nice gifts. He goes into her house and finds the broken racket. It's like, wow, he was so quick to just find a replacement and just say, okay, you're next kind of deal.
Yep. And I love the bit where Robert goes to like that meeting with the competing firm, and he's like, oh, this guy's been trying to get me to work for him for ages. He'll be so happy. And then like two things I love about this scene is, one, it seems like Raymond controls everyone basically, or has an influence on everyone's dealings in the city, because this guy never shows up for the meeting at all. And it's clearly because Raymond probably called him and was like, hey, no. But then I also love, because at the beginning of the story, when Robert is waiting in like Raymond's waiting room to see him, his secretary volunteers like, oh, if I ever showed you my son. And then she asked if they're trying to have kids, and he's like, oh, we can't, blah, blah, blah. And then in this one, he like sees the picture on her desk. He's like, oh, is that your son? He's like, well, my grandson. And then she doesn't really give a shit about talking to him. And he's like, well, my wife and I are going to try to have kids now. There was a problem, but it's over. She's like, okay, go away. It's whatever. Yeah.
Please stop talking to me.
I know.
That whole sequence is so funny. And those are those pleasantries, the kindness of pleasantries, and all this kind of just regular stuff. But it's like, at the end of the day, I don't give a shit about your kid. I mean, in that context, in that very specific context. But yeah, I think that this first vignette, the death of RMF, it's very funny in a lot of ways. Especially how I feel like when Raymond is no longer in control and pressing his thumb and kind of making these decisions, Robert can't make any decisions on his own anymore. Like he goes to the bar and he's like, I have no idea what to order. Well,
he's like, what do you recommend? He's like, you want a red or a white? And he's like, what's good? You're
Yeah.
like, oh my god. And the bartender's like, I recommend this from this here.
Yeah. He gives him like the most basic wine. He's like, white Chardonnay from New Zealand. It's like,
Yeah.
yep. All right, go for it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but
You
it
just
was
can't
so
decide.
funny because he hasn't made a single decision in like 10 years. So he just sits around his house doing nothing and literally cannot function without Raymond's direction. So he like in desperation goes to Raymond. It's like, please take me back. And Raymond's like, fuck off. Holy shit.
Yeah. Go do something else with your life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's so weird.
And he also tries to connect with that woman at the like country club in the same way that he met his wife.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work because, of course, it doesn't work. It's like he's just on the ground moaning about his hand or something, and this lady's like, "What? Ew," and then leaves. And it
am I gonna
only
stop?
works. It only works again when the woman in question, Rita, is someone who's also in Raymond's orbit, which maybe it's. Part of me thinks on rewatch that her role was to like lure Robert back in, but maybe also she was just a potential replacement for him, and he wants his spot back. I haven't decided which way I land, but I do kind of think that makes a little bit of sense too, right?
Yeah, I like that observation. I didn't even make that. I think that now that you said it, I 100% believe that she was just another tool by Raymond to get Robert back. Like he was never actually going to like give her like a job or something like that. Or maybe he did, but it's like, you're just here for this purpose. That's my headcanon now.
And maybe he'll use her for more stuff going forward too. Like he'll have two people like that. But there were so many funny moments in this storyline. Like the indecision about the drink was one.
Yes.
And then one of my favorite parts was when Raymond tells him, it's like, go sit at the bar, drink something, non-alcoholic, so it doesn't cloud your judgment, and then come talk to me later tonight. And then he goes and orders a double Johnny Walker or something. It's like, just kidding, I'll have a Virgin Mary. And then it's just like ready. It's like, right here, sir. He's like, oh, that was fast.
Yeah, I love that bit. It's so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like that bit too, where he just goes back, takes the racket after they took it from him. It's so petty, but I'm so glad he did it.
Yeah, that's a great moment with that harsh piano score too, right? Because he's walking up the stairs in his boot because he broke his foot on purpose, and then you hear the like, and it shows the racket in the case, and he's just like,
That's it. I'm taking this.
that's mine.
This is a B&E. I'm gonna escalate it to robbery now.
But any other thoughts about the first storyline before we move on?
No, I don't think so. It's just about it's a pathetic little story about a guy who can't really make decisions without someone else manipulating him and controlling him. It's
ultimately,
kind of tragic.
Yeah. Well, he does kill RMF. Which is, oh my god, that's such a funny sequence. He gets the like orderly to go into the bathroom and like beats him up and steals his.
Yeah.
In front of the guy who's sitting on the.
Yeah, the guy just like looks up at him. He's like, "Oh, it's not my business."
Yeah. And then he rolls RMF out of the parking lot and dumps him on the ground.
Oh, that's brutal. Oh my god.
It's so bad.
Poor RMF.
Yeah. But I mean, it's what he signed up for, I guess. You know, I don't know.
That's he's like, oh, he basically agreed to die. And
yeah.
It's like, but did he? Did he? I don't know about that.
We don't know if he knew that's what was gonna happen.
Yeah, like there's no way that he knew that and was like, yeah, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But who cares?
But anyway, RMF is flying. This time we follow Jesse Plemons playing Daniel, a cop who is mourning his missing wife, Liz, played by Emma Stone, until she is rescued. And at this point, once she comes home, he begins to suspect that Liz is not actually Liz, but instead an imposter. Probably the one
sus.
Yeah, probably the one I understood the least of the three, just like because of the very end of it.
Yes.
I got what was going on, and then I kind of didn't. But it was also really upsetting just watching Liz get so thoroughly abused and mistreated after returning from like a really traumatizing experience, right? It's like you can just imagine this person going through something horrible and feeling such relief at getting back home and being around your loved ones, only to be treated like an imposter and asked to cut off parts of your body. And it's really fucked up. Yeah, but and while there are enough little details thrown in to make you feel like maybe something is a little bit off, I ultimately do believe that this was Liz, and Daniel just refuses to accept it. Like, we see he goes to pull out the dog tag with her name on it, but then he sees she has a dog tag, and it's like, ooh, why does she have the dog tag? It's like, but maybe she just has a matching one that has his name on it, and he is not thinking about that or something. Her shoes don't fit as well, but her feet might be swollen because of the like injuries and trauma she went through. The chocolate cake eating could just be because of what she said. She wanted sweet food because she was on a fucking island.
Seriously, well, you know, when I was watching this too, a part of me was thinking about, you got to think about it from her perspective. And for some reason, I just kept thinking of Castaway, Tom Hanks, you know. And the reason why I kept thinking of that was when he came back. That was specifically what I'm talking about there, because he's gone for like 2 years or something like that, and he finally gets back to society, and he's changed, man. Yep. He's changed on that island, like, and everyone in his life has moved on. They've kind of forgotten about him, and he just has to adjust to the world around him, and just all this growing up really fast and really compressed, and it's very emotional and kind of heartbreaking, and that's kind of what I was thinking of with her character here, because she's been through the shit, man. If you were shipwrecked for 2 weeks, however long it was, or you're just like left for dead and everyone's looking for you, it's like, I think my priorities would change if I'm on an island. I think I would change a lot about my lifestyle and my habits, and I think ultimately Daniel was just like going nuts in a way. And I don't think that the medication helped and all that stuff, but there's something weird and spooky going on in this second vignette.
Right. Well, and I'm glad you mentioned perspective and thinking about it from Liz's perspective, because I feel like as soon as she returns home, the story adopts her perspective, and we are following her experiences through Daniel's abuse. Like when he tells her to cut off her finger, right? Like we don't go back up the stairs with him. We stay with her as she sits on that, and we see how that's affecting her, and then she ends up going through with it because she wants to please him, like she wants his love and everything, and so she, acquiesces. And I actually I read on Reddit before we started recording, so I was trying to understand the story a little bit better, and I just wanted a quick read, but a user named Pocket Fart that actually had a really good read on this story, and it's their interpretation was it's like kind of how there's danger in forcing this idealized image of your partner onto a relationship, because when you're eventually going to be confronted with reality. They are not this perfect person. They are a human being just like you and have all these flaws. And when confronted with that, if you have painted this perfect picture of them, that can lead to abusive and cruel behavior when you become disappointed in the reality. And I think that's actually a really excellent interpretation of this story, because she's been gone for a little while. He only has his memories of her, and he refuses to accept the real person who returns from this traumatic thing, and maybe even just refuses to accept that she's been changed by the trauma she's undergone. And but yeah.
Well, I think that's so true, because I think that when people get into these kinds of abusive relationships, I think obviously every relationship's different, and every abusive relationship is different too. But I feel like the victim in these stories are always kind of like, they have this romanticized version of the other party, or both parties do, and you have these lofty expectations about what this relationship is going to be, you're kind of idolizing this idea
Yeah.
of this person rather than accepting who they are in front of you, right as rain. And it's fucked. It's fucked. The story's fucked.
Yeah. But there are some funny bits in here too, I would say.
Yes.
The joke where Daniel has the other two friends over for dinner, and he's like, "Can we watch a video?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't think that'd be good for you. It'll be really uncomfortable for us." And then he's like, "Okay." And then he just starts fucking crying to like manipulate them. And they're like, "Okay." And a hard cut to them watching a fucking sex tape that they all made together.
Yeah.
And
It's like, oh, this is so awkward.
and like his friend's like, "Can you turn it down a little?"
Yeah, just turn the volume down just a little bit. I
Yeah.
don't need to hear every noise.
And
That was a great bit.
yeah, another great bit is the favorite song thing. It's like he's like, "I asked her to play my favorite song. Everybody knows my favorite song is this, but she played a different song." It's like Rainbow in the Dark, right? That's playing in that scene. Like
Something like that. I can't remember.
But I loved that. I also loved Liz talking to her dad about the island of where the dogs are in control, and like she has this whole like kind of touching speech about like surviving on this island and how it changed her perspective on life. But the island was ruled by dogs, and they ate all of the lamb for themselves, and they only left chocolate around for the people because dogs cannot eat chocolate. And then it's like that's why she essentially settled for Daniel.
Yeah.
And I love
Wow.
that her dad does not react as if anything she said is remotely strange. He just takes all of the dog ruling island on board and moves on, and then is like, "Okay, bye."
I need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was such a weird bit, and so that just kind of popped into my head too. Was that I'm glad that you mentioned the dream, because I feel like dreams keep popping up throughout these stories too. Like in the first story, Robert he's talking about these terrible dreams, and we see some one of those dreams, and he goes off and kind of lives it for real when he's talking. To
But
his
he doesn't
boss.
bring the burger when he goes for real.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a little different there, but yeah, dreams, and then in the third sequence, which we'll get to, there's also another dream thing there. It's like, oh, I didn't put that together until just now, but because she's got that dream with the twins,
With the pool, and all the dream sequences are in black and white. I'm just realizing the end of this second story with the dogs driving the cars and everything, we're just seeing her dream because it doesn't show us as she's describing it like we get with the other two stories.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, this second vignette where RMF is flying, and RMF was the helicopter pilot who saved her this time around. But the ending of this vignette is kind of confusing, but I think it's open to interpretation, and I think that you and I are kind of on the same wavelength about how we think this ending is, because Daniel is ultimately, he grows increasingly distrustful of his wife, and he's on medication after shooting this kid in the hand during a traffic stop.
Oh my God, what a weird...
Which was so funny because he shoots the kid in the hand, and then he goes up and he tries to lick the wound. It's like, what are you doing?
Wait, I'm sorry to interrupt your train of thought, but can we talk about what a great character the police chief is?
Yeah.
He's your friend. Help him. Look how he's looking at that suspect. How they just fucked for the first time. And he thinks that they're in love.
Oh, I love that police chief. He's so funny.
What a great the bit character.
Oh my God. The funniest thing about him, in my opinion, was that it's like his voice.
Yeah.
His voice.
I'm so happy that Liz is back, Daniel. Thank you.
It's so high pitched. I would never have guessed that voice would come out of that man.
Well, I just love the he's your friend. Help him.
Yeah. Help him.
And then afterward, he's like, Daniel is talking to his partner, and he's like, didn't you think the suspect kind of looked like Liz? He's like, that suspect looked nothing like Liz.
Yeah. What are you talking about, dude? You're going crazy.
Yeah.
I think that's a sign. That's a very clear sign. I'm glad you remember that line because that's a very clear sign.
Yeah.
That he's going crazy.
Right.
In a way.
Well, and I'd like, in circling back, just on the note of the partner and circling back to the favorite song, when it cuts back to them, he's like, well, you like that song a lot too. Like, I just love, there's so many great line deliveries in this movie overall, but especially in this story.
Yes. This second sequence is just packed with them. It's so great.
Okay. But back to what you were saying.
The ending is Daniel's distressful. He's on medication. After he asks his wife to cut off and cook up one of her appendages for him, he asks her to cut out her liver and cook it up for him because she wants to please him, appease him, and, get his love, basically. But then he finds her dead in the living room with her liver cut out on the floor. And then he answers the knock at the door, and it's his real wife, and they lovingly embrace.
Yeah.
And I think given the medication, I think given the fact that Liz confessed at the OBGYN office that Daniel hit her, and that he told the psychiatrist that she did it to himself, I'm more inclined to believe her.
Right.
So given the medication, given that, and given the stuff with the thumb, and just all the general crazy vibes about Daniel, I feel like that the real Liz at the door is a hallucination.
Yeah, a figment of his imagination, for sure.
Exactly.
And yeah, and I think like we're given enough information to see that Daniel is clearly delusional and losing his mind. Like even emphasized outside of his relationship with Liz with the traffic stop scene where he he thinks that random girl has his phone, pulls a gun on a guy, shoots him in the hand and starts eating his hand. This guy's clearly losing it. And like we should emphasize, this is a story about domestic abuse, and the main guy is a cop. So, that it's his fault.
Yes.
And what you were saying too about the way they frame the incident, like Liz is very clearly like hurt and scared and shares this information only under confidentiality, and then like the way Daniel is telling his doctor about it, it's like, oh, you fucker, you told her to do this, you made this abusive demand, and she did it to acquiesce to you, and then you're trying to reframe that act of kindness on her part,
yes,
into she's crazy and might hurt me. Oh god, it was so fucking evil.
Yeah, Daniel's a shitty guy.
He is a shitty guy.
Like, I believed at the start that he loved his wife and everything like that, but I think, when she got lost at sea and stuff, it's like, that just kind of, that was the nail in the coffin for their relationship.
Yeah. My lord, though, can we talk about just how much he looked like a cop in the scene where he's waiting for the helicopter to land, and he has those like dorky sunglasses on, and he's just like, so thumb coated.
Yeah. Well, you and I was like, I mentioned it to you too, that there's I think the first scene of him in this sequence, he looks a lot like Matt Damon. It comes across really well here. Yeah.
Jesse Plemons always kind of looked like Matt Damon.
Yeah. It was just like the angle and the way his hair was cut. It was just like, it was just very surprising for me. But interesting vignette. Overall, anything else you want to say on that one?
No, I think we can move on to anthology number 3, RMF Eats a Sandwich, where we follow Emily. That's why you thought she was going by Emily, because her character in this is Emily.
I could have sworn I saw like an article title that says that she wanted to reclaim that name, because I think Emma Stone is like a, her stage name or something like that. But I could be wrong.
Maybe.
I don't know.
You might be right.
Emily is her character here.
Yes. But Emily is in a cult, and she is driving around with Andrew, right? Played by Jesse Plemons. Is that his name of this one?
So.
Yeah. And they are basically looking for this prophesized woman to bring back to their cult. They are examining different candidates who fit this specific criteria. of like they are a twin who's a specific age. It's 130 pounds. One of the twins is
Specific
dead.
height.
Yeah, specific
Yes.
height. They check teeth. They check like breast to hip measurements and a bunch of
It's
other
so
stuff.
weird.
It's very weird. Yeah,
But that's the kind of stuff that you get in cults.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you get these very like prophetic messages, and it's like, this is the way it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Cults are fascinating to me. I never will join one.
Good.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. I'm not pulled into one, but
Mm-hmm.
I think that this was probably my favorite vignette of the three, just because I think these characters, especially our protagonist Emily, I feel like that she had lots of layers to her, lots of complexity to explore,
Yep.
and I think just everyone in that compound, like even Andrew, I was like, I want to know more about him too. But
Yep.
I also just really love a good cult story too. Those are always fun, in my opinion.
Yes. Let's see what else. I will say too. The story does contain the most upsetting and probably triggering scene in the film. Trigger warning right now, actually, as well for sexual assault. Because Emily's husband, fucking just straight up rapes her in this. He drugs her, and as she goes limp, he, had sex with her, and it's genuinely horrifying. It's shot and shown very matter of fact and dryly, which almost makes it feel even more horrifying. But it also, I think, narratively for me, it sort of flipped my understanding of this storyline on its head, because up until this point, I had this like sadness for Emily as a character because we know the trope, and like we've seen it probably most recently with like QAnon people, right? It's like they dive into this cult culture, and then their family has to like back away and separate themselves because they just like can't anymore, right? And that's what I thought the dynamic was between her and her husband and her daughter. But now after this, I kind of get the feeling that something like this had happened to her before, and that is probably what led her to seek out companionship in another form and find this cult that she was a part of. It also really, jumping ahead a little bit, like where she is reunited with her daughter at the end and tells her to stay away from her dad. On second viewing, I've seen this twice now. It really, that part combined with him being a rapist really reminded me in a very sickening way about how he said the daughter is starting to look like her a little bit. And I was like,
Oh yeah, it's creepy.
yeah, it just, this part of the storyline is very, very upsetting, and
Yes.
for obvious reasons, right?
Yeah, it really made me upset to watch that scene, and I really felt for her. And you're totally right, because I had this different conception of who she was and the history that they had. It just kind of felt like maybe she just ran away from them because she found this cult and just wanted to become a cult member, you know.
Yeah.
But it seems like that she was more running away from him and still loved her daughter. Like that he was the problem. And yeah, you see those themes of control, manipulation, very strong here too.
Yeah.
In this storyline. And you know, it's not just the husband. I mean, the husband is obviously very controlling and manipulative. Like he kind of manipulated her into coming over, and like he knew that she wasn't going to be on time. I feel like that he probably knew that already.
Yeah.
I'm making some assumptions there, but then he just controlled that situation and roofied her. It's,
Right.
ugh,
Well,
it's so
and where
gross.
does he first run into her that day? At the drugstore.
Right.
What do you
right.
think he's fucking getting at the drugstore? Like,
gross.
because the girl didn't hurt her foot. Remember when they go to the motel at the end, she's confused when Emma Stone asked about her foot because there was no foot injury. It was all like he was manipulating her. It was, yeah.
He was just trying to find a way to get what he wanted. And, you know, the cult, too. I think we got to talk about that cult a little bit, because cults are all about control. They always have been. And you can make arguments about what constitutes as a cult and what's a religion and what's a gang and all this. What's a social club? All that kind of stuff. But, you know, cults, this one, obviously, is very much about control. they have this tempting spiritualism that seems to be supernatural at points, but kind of every cult has that in a way where they're making these big predictions or these wild guesses that turn out to be true or something like that. And there's always just a little bit of like supernaturalism weaved into cults, but here too is just they're doing bizarre things like tasting the skin for contamination, from another sexual partner that's outside of the compound or outside of the leaders, I guess, which is gross.
Yeah.
By the way, but I mean, no judgment. But at the same time, ugh. Or just how they would only drink the water from the compound pool too. Like
and that was about the contamination as well.
Yes, and yeah, it's just such a weird little cult, and I wanted to learn more about them.
I know. I wanted to know what their whole deal was because we don't get a whole ton of like information about what they like want or do. I found it interesting that it seems like their Messiah figure is somewhat real and has power, right? Like there is healing that this Ruth girl is able to do. I love how just like bought in Ruth's twin is to this whole mythology.
Yeah.
Like so enthusiastic about every element, including her own death. And
she's gung ho, man.
Yeah, it was really wild. And yeah, I love that. I also love the I don't know. The very ending of this story is such a wonderful facepalm moment.
Yeah.
Because Emma Stone has kidnapped Ruth. She's drugged and kidnapped her and discovered that she is magical and can resurrect someone, RMF in this case, and has her in the backseat of the Mustang and is reaching back, not looking at the road, to give her some water. And crashes the car, and Ruth flies to the windshield and fucking dies.
Can't resurrect yourself.
Yeah, I was thinking... My God, I'm so fucking stupid. You know what I thought of just then when you said that?
What's that?
Darth Plagueis.
Did you have the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
Save others, but
yeah,
dying, but not himself.
Ironic. She could heal others, but she couldn't heal herself.
Yeah, but
yeah, I couldn't agree more with her with this ending here because she's vindicated in a way, and you're rooting for Emily here because it's like she found it. She's been kicked out of the compound, like she kind of lost her way of life, but she's dedicated. She found the person, and she's got proof. She knows that it's real. So she does her little dance, and I love that dance sequence. It's so fun. And then she gets into this car accident, and it's like, oh, never mind. You don't win.
Yeah.
You were negligent on the road, and that's what you get.
Right. Well, apparently that dance, Emma Stone just did that on the set of Poor Things, just in between takes. And they were like, oh, you should do that again in Kinds of Kindness, which is kind of fun. And but I actually,
that's awesome.
Circling back, tying this to the first story, it is another example, both with the Willem Dafoe characters, of messing up one time, and that results in the complete end of the relationship. Because Emily seems like she's a pretty gung-ho, loyal member of this cult, right? And she unwillingly is assaulted by her husband, ex-husband, and that gets her kicked out of the cult. Like, she didn't make a decision there. She was taken advantage of, and even that is enough to like, no, goodbye. And so yeah, little connection there. I don't
more manipulation, more control.
Is there an example of that in the second story? I don't think there was.
I feel like maybe I was gonna say Willem Dafoe's character again because he kind of like just has this one read on Daniel, the husband character. He's just like, he's a shitty guy. Like I've never liked him, kind of deal. But at the same time, I don't know if there was really much in there about that.
Yeah.
I will say though, in this third sequence, I was so happy to see Emily driving around this Mustang. I thought that was so fun. The way she just whip it around, and it's such an annoying car when you see it on the road. No shade, but just loud cars kind of get to me sometimes.
Oh yeah.
But I liked this. I thought it was just so fucking weird and so cool, and you just wouldn't expect that kind of woman to step out of that car. It's like, oh, that's okay, cool.
Right. Well, and just the idea that like she's just a member of a cult, but she drives like a fucking maniac is such a fun little character quirk.
Yeah.
I thought. Let's see what else was. Yeah, but anything else about this story specifically?
Well, the only other thing that I wanted to mention was that I don't know if you stuck around for the credits in your first viewing or not, but we didn't stick around for the credits in this second viewing. But apparently there was a post-credit scene.
Oh my
mid-credit
God.
Scene that we both missed, where RMF, just tying it all together here with the title of the sequence, he's eating a sandwich in a diner after being brought back to life.
Oh my God.
And I love that. I think that's so funny, and I want to see that. I'm going to look that up.
RMF will return.
Yeah. What a legend. Well, speaking of RMF, because his name's in every vignette title, he's a character in each one. Like, I feel like there is some significance behind this character. And so I did a little digging online, and there are some interesting things that I wanted to mention that I found. And I think that there's from my understanding and from the articles that I've read, he's kind of the same character throughout this whole thing.
Okay.
From what I can tell, he's kind of the same character in each vignette. The core cast, they change roles, they're different people, and all that stuff. But he's kind of the same dude. Yeah. And apparently in the end post-credit scene, he's still got the RMF embroidered on him, like the same RMF from the first one. But, he's kind of... I also don't buy it entirely that he's the same person. Yeah. I think it's kind of more of a symbolic thing because there's like lots of like logistical details that you need to think about of like how does this connect and how is he there and yada yada yada. Especially with the order of things, I don't think it's in chronological order or whatever. But I think it's he's just kind of an interesting character to have in the background because he's kind of this central way of tying these stories together that's not very on the nose. And he's got this role, this supportive role that I noticed as well with all the appeasing parties in this movie. And by appeasing, I mean those people that are trying to appease the other person in their relationship. So Robert, Liz, and Emily. He's got a role with Robert of being killed by Robert. And then with Liz, he's the one who saves her. And then Emily, he's the one who's like there at the end to be resurrected with Ruth. So he's like, it's all kind of tied together that way. I also saw a very interesting Reddit theory from a user named Imaginary Bench 7752 that each letter of RMF's name somehow corresponds to his role in the narrative. Okay. So like in the first one, redemption for Robert, manipulation with Liz, and then F for faith with Emily, which I thought was kind of cool. Yeah. But he's an odd one, Did you ever read on him?
Not really, unfortunately, but I agree with you. I don't think he's the same guy, but I think he is RMF in every story, if that makes sense. Like, RMF is not necessarily the same person, but RMF is always there.
Yeah, he's the dude. And the director, he gave a very vague synopsis about RMF's significance in a Variety interview, which I just wanted to quote real quick, where he said, it felt like a subtle way to connect the three stories other than the fact that the same actors play a different character in each story. We didn't want to have a main character reappearing, but a character that had a short time in the film. At the same time, his presence was pivotal. So very vague answer about his significance, but I think that there's a way that you can kind of find some meaning in this character, and I think he kind of went on in that interview to say something along those lines of like, you can kind of attribute whatever thing that you want to him, and you can probably find some significance there. But RMF, what a homie.
Yeah, but let's close out by talking about some connecting themes that tie all the stories together, because narratively they are not connected, but thematically they certainly are. And I think the most obvious is just this often unhealthy desire to please other people in your life. The first story has Robert surrendering every decision in his life in order to please Raymond. The second story has Liz cutting off and out parts of her body that ultimately kills her in order to please Daniel. And the third story has Emily striving for the approval of her cult leaders. And that causes her to accidentally kill someone. And there's also, I think, a connecting thing of hospital visits and or morgue visits. In the first one, Robert is supposed to end up in a hospital and then ends up visiting Rita in the hospital. In the second one, obviously, they go to the hospital while Liz is recovering after her boat accident. And then in the third one, it's the morgue. But I don't know if this is a connection, really, or if it's just how the stories play out. But RMF in story 1 is killed by Robert in a hospital, and RMF is resurrected in story 3 in the morgue by Ruth. So I don't really know what's going on with that. But if in the post-credit scene he's wearing that same embroidered RMF shirt, that's kind of interesting. That post-resurrection he's wearing the same clothes that he appears at Raymond's house in the first story.
Yeah, I was reading one article that was really trying to figure it out logistically, like how it could have worked if he was the same character throughout the whole thing. And it's, you got to like jumble up the order of the vignettes. Like the first one comes like in the middle, and the second one's first, and all this other stuff. But
I don't think that's the right way to read this film, though. I don't think it's meant to be taken literally, obviously. But
exactly, I agree. And, you know, this movie, I think, at the end of the day, what we've been talking about for a while, kind of dancing around it and mentioning it, it's about control, it's about manipulation, it's about feigned kindness, and how people will use kindness as a mask to manipulate you, control you, do things that give them pleasure, power, whatever. Raymond directly controls every important detail of Robert's life, and Robert feels lost without that direction. And one thing I forgot to mention earlier, too, was that as I realized it, as we were putting together our show notes, that those gifts that Raymond got, that Robert got from Raymond, were these artifacts from moments where individuals lost control. Like a broken racket, the
burned helmet.
When you're angry, broken helmet from a Formula One. I don't think all of them were necessarily broken things, but like it was just kind of like these discarded things. Like, these are the Nikes.
Ribbon.
Yeah, like a third place ribbon. These are the Nike shoes that Jordan had when he won one game back in like '96 or something like that, and it wasn't even an important game. And it's like, this is a world famous ping pong ball. It's like, what?
Yeah. Actually, underrated joke right there. When they value his entire collection room at like $10,000, it's like, like if you're a collector and your whole collection is worth $10,000, you've been ripped off.
Yeah, you're not doing too good. That was a funny sequence. But then, Daniel manipulates Liz's kindness to slowly kill herself, and Emily's husband, he manipulates her into staying late, and he roofies her, and the cult has significant sway and control over Emily's life direction. So, lots of themes of control, manipulation weaved throughout the story. And then we already briefly mentioned the dreams, but I liked that they kind of kept popping up as well throughout the story. Yeah,
me too. A great joke in this one too, the name of the boat.
Ho!
Daniel says he hates it. It reminds him too much of Christmas, not water.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be H2.
Yeah, 2 H's, but it looks like just ho. Oh, it's so funny, but yeah, kinds of kindness. I think it's a fun movie. It's there's lots to dissect, and I'm definitely going to rewatch it at some point.
Yeah, definitely worth watching. Very enjoyable. Parts of it are certainly traumatic as well. But if you've made it this far in the episode, you know that, and you know what they are. I don't want to say if you liked Poor Things, you would like this because they're very different films. But if you liked stuff about Poor Things or The Lobster or his past work, like check this out. Check it out anyway. It's an interesting film. It will enrich your cinema diet. But
Yes.
yeah, I'd recommend Kinds of Kindness. And with that, let's transition into other stuff for a little bit. Niles,
Yes.
what have you been watching, reading, playing, whatever?
Yeah, so I took this time I had off to catch up on the Acolyte. Watch it. It's a fun Star Wars series. It's not amazing, but I'm liking it a lot. And there's still 2 more episodes to come out, and yeah, I'm just. It feels original and fresh to me. It doesn't feel tied down to a lot of stuff, and I feel like Star Wars just tends to get tied down by things like that, like the chronology and everything. So I'm liking the Acolyte.
Check out our Ahsoka episode for more on that topic.
Yes, please check that out. Also watching The Boys, fantastic 4th season. We're going to talk about that coming up here soon, one of our next few episodes. So please stay tuned for that. Also been watching some episodes of X-Files, actually.
Nice.
Old X-Files with Scully and Mulder. It's so fun. It's so camp. It's so dated, and it's just
It's like 90s,
a silly
right?
time. It was like 80s into the 90s.
Okay.
I would say like late 80s, 90s, but I could be getting those dates wrong. But yeah, it's more 90s-esque, and it's just like very old, big, clunky computers and all the logistical details of those horrible days. I also read this great book called Paradise Rot by Jenny Haval, who's a Scandinavian author. Really liked it a lot. It's a very quick read. It's just like under like 150 pages. It goes really fast. But I would kind of attribute it in a way to House of Leaves in a way.
Okay.
It's not as complex as that, but it's kind of like this. She's staying in this house that feels alive in a way, but it's also rotting in a way too, and just like the relationships she's got going on. It's a very quick, fascinating read. I would recommend that book.
Just based on the name, any thematic connection to Paradise Lost at all?
I'm sure that there is, but I did not read Paradise Lost.
I've only read the first section in my English class or whatever. We read it, and we only read like the part about like Satan like descending into hell and all that stuff, which was the beginning of the book. It's very
I'll definitely read that at some point because I'm sure that there's some parallels in there. But it's such a cool little story set in like a college town in England, and she's super quiet, and it's just like her way of just navigating through this collegiate experience in a way.
Gotcha.
But it evolves into much more than that. And lastly, I am proud to say I finished The Sopranos.
Yay!
Finally,
You did it.
Yay! Oh, what a devastating ending. those last few episodes, they just got punch you. But it's such a fantastic show. I don't want to spoil too much of it, but I'd honestly say it's one of the best TV shows of all time.
Yeah.
That's definitely my read on it. It's not always, the quality isn't always consistent, I would say, like especially in those like 3-4 seasons. But everything else I think is pretty great.
Okay.
Especially considering when the show was coming out, it feels very aware of social issues and what it is to be an American in some ways. But that's it for me. What have you been up to lately, Dylan?
Continuing to read the Cryptonomicon, as I have been for quite some time now, but also playing through Elden Ring's DLC, Shadow of the Erd Tree. I think I'm over halfway through the DLC now. It's fucking tough, but you like, that's the thing with these games. You like, if you just sit down and you're like, okay, I'm gonna fight this boss over and over and over again for a few times right now, and I'm just gonna pay attention to what they do, you will learn and you will get good and execute on it and win.
Nice.
over there, and I'm doing great so far. But
Hell yeah.
yeah, and then over the weekend there was some absolutely insane discourse in the world of film Twitter, which inspired me to finally watch Michael Mann's 2006 Miami Vice film with Colin Farrell and Jamie Foxx. And, I do not love it as much as a large contingent of film Twitter seems to, but I thought it was a pretty good movie. I liked it. And I think from what I understand, people like it more and more on rewatch. It is a lot of, like, the nighttime stuff is very, very much has that, like, shot on digital artifacting, especially from, like, 2000s cameras. You know what I'm talking about? But
I think so.
But, maybe that was intentional. Maybe it wasn't. I don't particularly love that aesthetic, but I thought the film was pretty good. I also am watching The Acolyte and The Boys and enjoying both of them. The Boys is fantastic, as always. The Acolyte, I'm with you, is pretty good, but not amazing. We will talk about it more later, and I'll run down all that after I get through this. Also been watching House of the Dragon Season 2. The latest episode was pretty insane. It's a good show. I really enjoy the, like, just how much of a tragedy it is. It feels, we talked about this in Season 1, but, like, I remember some book fans were not happy that the whole conflict is sort of spearheaded by this misunderstanding of what King Viserys said, right? But to me, I think that adds so much to the story because it's like this Shakespearean tragedy now, right? It's like it's reminding me in a lot of ways of Romeo and Juliet, where, like, oh no, she's dead, I'm gonna kill myself, and then she wakes up from her, like, sleeping tonic, and it's like, oh no, he's dead, I'm gonna kill myself. And it's like, well, if y'all had just communicated a little bit better, everything would have been fine, but you didn't, so it's not. And this is kind of reminding me of that in a weird way. And lastly, I've been watching My Adventures with Superman, which is another Jack Quaid performance from The Boys.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, he's the voice of Superman. It's just a fun little show. I enjoy having it, and I hope it continues on for many seasons because it's just like it's a nice, cozy Superman show that's very positive.
Yeah, you've talked about it before. I need to watch that.
Yeah, it's on Max. It's pretty solid. But yeah, let's see. Let me write down this time code real quick. Boom. Okay. All right. So that though that's our episode for this week. And looking ahead a couple weeks, let me get my calendar out. This is for your sake, the audience, so you know what's upcoming.
Yes.
Our next episode will be on July 24th. That is going to be on the most recent season of The Boys. And then we're going to break our format a little bit. We're going to come back the following week on the 31st. We're going to review Deadpool and Wolverine. And then on August 7th, we are going to talk about The Acolyte. And then after that, it will be back to our regularly scheduled programming. I think House of the Dragon will be after that, probably. So everybody catch up on all those shows. Be ready.
Get out there.
Yeah. But thank you all so much for watching and or listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks, as I just said, talking about The Boys. Niles, until then, where can people find you online?
People can follow me on Instagram at Niles Got No Styles. What about you, Dylan? Where can people follow you online?
You can find me on Instagram at DylanD1026, on Twitter at DDayMovies, on YouTube at DDayMovies, on Twitch, maybe, again, at DDay_movies. You can find both of us on your podcast platform of choice at Play Pause Rewind, as well as on YouTube at Play Pause Rewind and Play Pause Rewind videos. We're also on TikTok at Play Pause Rewind _podcast and Instagram with the same handle, I think. All of that is linked in the description. Just follow the links. You'll get there. Thank you all so much again. We really appreciate it. We'll see you guys back here in 2 weeks. Goodbye.
Bye.